Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on smart cities. And you know that World Talent Economy Forum. Right now, we are developing some very interesting projects in Bangladesh. Today we just finished our visit in Mireshorai. Mr. Homestoner from USA with his team. Right now they are in Dhaka, and I believe that it's a very interesting uh, sessions, and we are organizing many interesting projects inside Dhaka. So first, I would like to give chance, Mr. Rob and Ali, what you want to share about smart city.
Well, smart cities are a concept that goes back quite a ways. The first smart city I studied was the one that Walt Disney attempted to create in Florida. Unfortunately, that city never became a city. It just became a portion of the amusement park, largely because, and this is often a problem when you're trying to bring forth a large municipal project, is that attorneys bought up a lot of the land around the area that he was planning to turn into a city, and then wanted to sell it at a premium, and made the project non-viable. But the concept really was to create a city that was intelligent, that was designed from the ground up to be optimized for logistics, security, transportation, energy delivery, and management. And the evolution of the smart city, the concept of smart city has at its heart now artificial intelligence, with the idea that the artificial intelligence would be used to help monitor traffic, help keep citizens safe, and to optimize the use of resources, be it utilities or human resources, in terms of being able to provide people to assist the citizens, do maintenance, and do law enforcement. The concept as it now exists is heavily sensor-centric. It requires a massive deployment of millions of sensors to monitor the different aspects of the city, so that the problems can be identified before the citizens find them, and to best allocate the resources, the limited resources the city has, to address the biggest potential problems. In other words, make the management of a city less about subjective information and more about objective information through use of sensors. Also in the current implementation, there's a heavy influence of the metaverse, creating a digital twin of the city, and then interacting with the city via the digital twin. So you can use the digital twin to do testing and simulate decisions that are being contemplated, and therefore have a really good idea of how those decisions will play out. Often, as we have the case now with regard to municipalities, a number of the decisions are an error, but you don't know they're an error until months, if not years later, when you discover the consequential, the unintended consequential damages that have occurred because of the decision. With a large-scale digital twin, you can model that out, and days can become seconds, and see how something is likely to progress once you implement it. So thereby, you're able to better choose. The various city councils and mayors are able to better choose between alternatives based on actual data. And of course, to do that means you have to overcome the way things have always been done, which is much more subjective in nature, and that's always problematic in trying to implement a new system. Is the old system tends to be tenacious and want to hang in there, largely because a lot of people benefit from the old system. You start making decisions based on purely economic reasons. The folks that might otherwise financially benefit from the other way of making decisions are going to be harmed, and a lot of those people are in government. So in the end, the advance of the smart city is now heavily tied to the metaverse and artificial intelligence, but the limitations to advancement are largely tied to the lack of understanding and knowledge by the existing management ecosystem, and a lot of self-dealing that has occurred over time in the process, coupled with just the general sense of if it's not broke, don't fix it, not realizing that a lot of stuff in municipalities is badly broken, regardless of what the politicians tell you. So in the end, getting this stuff implemented properly is going to be problematic. We do have the technology. The question, though, is we really need a large-scale test case of something probably a little farther out than what we've seen in some of the Norwegian countries who have implemented smart city capabilities rather impressively, as has Singapore and South Korea. So So the next set of smart cities that come forward, a lot of us are watching Bill Gates' proposed city as it comes up, and of course, I'm always watching the tests of our colleges, which are probably the extreme of what a smart city could be because they take into account all the consumption, protection, and work aspects of a city into a cohesive whole. The arcology, of course, is my view of the way a smart city should have always been, and as yet has not really materialized. So that's it for my opening. I'll pass over to Sheridan to further the conversation.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. Sheridan Tatsuno.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Rob, thanks for the nice summary. Sheridan Tatsuno, I'm San Francisco. I'm an urban environmental planner. Back from the 70s, I started planning cities, local housing, community development, light rail, energy projects, massive cities. So I've kind of done the hands-on. A little background, I wrote an article, which I had a list here on Forbes, on the recent history of smart cities going, because from an urban planning point of view, we had these Disney and other small, in Irvine Ranch types of cities, but they were corporate cities. The big one really was 9/11, and New York City basically installed, video sensors all over, and because of the fear of terrorism, all the cities around the world installed these, and we ended up what we call surveillance cities, and none of it was approved by the citizens. It was just top-down. It was top-down corporate government with companies installing it, grabbing your data without any data privacy or transparency. Google tried to do that in their new town in Toronto waterfront, and they got kicked out of Toronto because they were grabbing people's data for the autonomous cars in their city and didn't want to share it with the community. So they got kicked out. That was led by the former New York City planning director. So of course he took the New York surveillance model. China is probably the leader in that area, but I think all American cities now are. I think that if you really look at surveillance, which is the big issue, is public-private data and who's using it. There's no transparency at all. Gen AI and AI is just going to accelerate that use of our private data, which is totally it's in the back end. Nobody knows what's going on. That's one of the big fears about ethical AI, is that the use of all this data captured. Now, fast forward, since then, World Economic Forum criticized smart cities as top-down corporate surveillance cities. No citizen participation, so they recommended, I wrote an article and I actually recommended grassroots citizen bottom-up involvement and transparency, which is missing in most cities around the world. And the World Economic Forum recommended it 2 years ago. So I think the big fight now is going to be from top-down corporate government cities like Bill Gates and Tesla. We call them company towns. And versus in bottom up, more of a less of an autocratic, oligarchic model from the past, and more of a democratic model. So that's the big battle that's going to be happening in smart cities over the next 20 years. Now, that also applies to the climate change. We have to move on beyond smart cities. They're actually dumb cities as an urban planner because they just automate pollution and they make more money by more traffic coming in and parking fees and stuff. So it's actually worsening the congestion by automating and accelerating the use of cars. We need to move from car-centric to human-centric cities. We have to greenify everything, more walking, which is going to hurt the smart cities revenue model right off the bat. So that's one thing you have to look at, is the finances, because that's what's driving it now. Land use is the big issue too. There's a new book called Segregation by Design, which talks about the history of segregation, Jim Crow from, now, and this one woman professor, A.C. Merced, did a brilliant job of analyzing how American cities basically segregated all communities in Bay Areas. San Francisco Bay Area is one of the worst, between white and colored people, and which is the big battle over affordable housing, because that's always called colored people or poor people. And most governments are opposed to that because they're mostly run by white homeowners. So that's kind of the climate action and grassroots. So you have the grassroots two fights, one on the digital AI front, and then you have the affordable housing front, which is affordable housing, which California is trying to force on all the cities right now, and they're fighting back. And then you have the other one, which is climate. San Francisco is running a deficit like California, 20 billion. So I noticed that Governor Newsom, California, is now cutting their climate funding this year because the industry's down because the tech sales are down. So it's all related. Real quickly, more pragmatically, I work in startup companies. We did use VR for sustainable cities in Sweden back in 2016. Copenhagen, Malmo, and Lund. The Swedish cities are about 40 years ahead, 30 to 40 years ahead of American cities in terms of sustainability. But even they're falling behind because we have to go to regenerativity now, which is actually bringing back nature. So they're even the Swedes are falling behind. We're using VR for designing cities. You can do whatever you want with VR, the Unreal Engine, just like they use for Star Wars. I proposed it to PG&E back in 2017 to simulate, because you could simulate disasters, because gamers like to destroy things, so they are playing around with destructive scenarios. So we have wildfires, flooding, storms, hurricanes. We could simulate anything. I proposed at PG&E, but they said maybe later, and then 6 months later, the campfire struck, killed 85 people, destroyed 18,000 buildings. PG&E went bankrupt, $30 billion, and the court just awarded the surviving families $15 billion. Sells a $45 billion hit. Doesn't include the money that all the cities have to pay for fire, police, water, housing, transportation, and social welfare payments. So we already know that any fire, one single fire, can easily add up to $20 to $30 billion each time if it hits in a major. And that was a small town too. It wasn't a big city. So we're talking major disruption coming, with fires as we see increasing. And so the key issue is how do you adapt, because they're going to happen already. They're already happening. And then long term, how do you mitigate by reducing the carbon? So there's two issues going on there. But that's on the hard part. Now, on a practical level, I work in IMEDIS. I'm a chief strategy officer, which is we're German doctors. We do virtual. We've been using VR AI for personalized medicine since 2017. So we've done all AI for 5 years. We use virtuality now for the healthy city. So we're trying to help figure out how do we use VR, AR, and IoT sensors to promote citizens' health and welfare before they get sick. That's the hard problem right now with climate action and all these other issues going on. So, I mean, it's a very complex problem. It's very multifaceted. On the other hand, lots of job opportunities across the board, from finance to planning to agriculture to farm, everything. So we basically, from my point of view, frankly, we have to reinvent all our cities 100%, because if we don't do that, we're just going to burn up. But thank you.
Tom, maybe you should speak.
Yeah, Tom, you're up, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually just reporting to class here, but I also know that this is a passion project for Sharif and his team, and I know that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she foresees a digital Bangladesh, and I'm sure that smart cities are a part of that plan, and hopefully we'll be talking to her next week, or her officials at least. And so I want to hear about what's going on with Sharif and his team with regard to smart cities there in Southeast Asia. If there's any news, obviously I'm all for smart cities. I've been driving around Denver today, and it's pretty smart. Some areas are pretty dumb, but yeah, I think it's a real important thing. There's a lot of ecological understanding here. There's a lot of bringing nature back into the city in Colorado, or at least in Denver, and I'm saying that's a really positive thing. And yesterday we were doing a show with a team from a longevity team from France, introducing them to the Transhumanist Party and all that. And they were saying that the transhumanists kind of focus too much on cyberpunk and dark cities and this type of aesthetic. But we also showed her there's this whole vast gallery of people who are talking about smart cities, talking about bringing nature back in. So it's more of a, and I've always said we need to bring the human back into transhuman, and that's kind of one of my go-tos. And so, yeah, I think it's really important that we focus on smart cities, and we obviously need to. The old paradigm is falling apart, and so, yeah, it's just a very important thing. But I really want to hear what Sharif is up to with regard to this, and in Bangladesh particularly.
Yeah, Tom, see you soon in Dhaka. Already we have another team in Dhaka. They are working with the economic zone, the homesteader with Pacific Rim Business Councils. So hopefully next week, 17th April, you will be available in Dhaka. So I'm sure you will enjoy our projects, enjoy our real life activities, and you can see how our dialogue influence the emerging economy and take more actions to change human lives. So more good things will come in the social media about your presence in Dhaka. Professor Ching, what you want to share about smart city?
I would advise you to talk to my student who's also from Dhaka, and the pole science. You see, this is totally. We have a totally different picture from what you people might be thinking. Let's talk about your project, Sheriff. The problem is that your focus is totally different from us. Okay, the basic thing is people. It's not technology. Also, people must have their cultural level raised. Okay, I have formed some smart district, not city, in San Francisco, in Palo Alto. Okay, where people are really happy. Okay, and there's almost no crime because we make them happy, so there's no hate who would do harm to others. So there's a total. The basic idea is that you need to look into the culture. Okay, you raise the culture. People have higher culture. They will have a happier time. Okay, the city will become not smart, but with higher culture level. Okay, so just to summarize, to give some background, I look at the World Economic Forum, and also our forum should be against the World Economic Forum, because where World Economic Forum has been a tremendous failure. The history of smart city is a testament to the failure of science versus post-science. Okay, such a big failure. All these guys talk about 3 years ago, and then now they pretty much quietly disappearing. Okay, so another way, there's no solution. You people haven't got the solution. And I think post-science is demonstrating some solution, not for a city. But there are two ways. One is the virtual way, get all the students around the world who willing to follow pole science, who have some understanding of pieces of pole science, they follow us. So we have a virtual smart city, smart virtual city. Okay, we communicate, we cannot territorially in the same place, but we can communicate. We have the same ideas, we exchange ideas. People locally in San Francisco Bay Area, I will get them to go dance with me. Okay, David is a dancer. Okay, that's good. Okay, so Tom looks so handsome. She'll come in and dance in Denver. There's a temple club in Denver, and that club owns also the San Francisco Temple Club. Okay, those are very rich skiers. They are millionaires. You see, so basically, cultural level, the scientific cultural level is roughly 7, and the pole science about 5, 6, 2 level above them. Okay, the one above the social science, human being has to know what is value. Okay, the value is in happiness. How do you generate happiness? First, you have financial independence. Okay, how do you get financial independence? To have some parents or grandparents who are billionaires. That's the way to generate totally free, relaxed. Sheridan should come to join us in Temple and the Westwood dance. You're in San Francisco. So you got to have financial independent. Then you have to have you have to have these young people who are totally relaxed. You don't see that. Okay, our world does not have enough knowledge or resource to afford so many billionaires. Okay, the only group I can think of, who will be totally relaxed are the descendants of the San Francisco area. If you go to Australia, these people are very happy. They go to club, but it's different. You go to Finland, you go to Iceland, they are not totally relaxed. You see, you have total relaxation. Then people come together, and in all this district, there's more. San Francisco is a terrible city. Okay, it's probably getting to become the crime city of USA, but in the district we go to, they are very rich. They have more police than homeless. Okay, so they just check. Sheridan knows this. In the Marina district, that anytime there's any trouble, police come in within a couple minutes. In the financial district, okay, but somebody just recently got famous person, entrepreneur got murdered in the downtown financial area. So the financial area is not as safe, as also not as rich as the Marina or Coal Hollow district. So this is what takes to make a smart city. Okay, the human culture level has to be raised. Okay, and all these companies, they try to do their thing. The companies are technologists, so their culture level is technology, which is somewhat below science. Okay, like Google, they deal with 4 variables. They are not even scientists. Okay, scientists deal with 5 variables. Social science will have to deal with 50 variables, so it's difficult. You go to value, then you see the real value in our life. Okay, you have to have social science. Then you go to life science, which is 500 variable. You would talk about the meaning of life, talk about the purpose of existence. It's another level. So this is, there's something we should go against. Our group, WTEF, should go against WEF, which is pretty much stuck in the top level of scientific culture. Okay, it tried to break into social science, but it does not have the solution. And also it's led by somebody who's into science, okay, technology, Claude Schwab. So his mind, his culture is got trapped into this scientific thinking. And I think you have Bangladesh. If you wonder, I have a student from Bangladesh, Mahadi Hassan. He should be able to get some idea from pole science and try to inject into Dhaka, and then as a pay back for training him in Dhaka. You see, Dhaka University used to be the number one university in your area, but it just dropped to very low ranking because of all this political debate. Okay, so my feeling is it's really pretty much smart city is getting to become a joke. People just inject their own cultural level into a place that's not going to work. It's just all science, technology. People call it digital dystopia. Well, I really think it's just a matter of culture. See. So I appreciate that I'm
Mhm.
invited to
Thank you, Professor Ching.
break a
Now I
little bit.
request Mr. David Smith.
Dr. Sharif, thank you again today. As you know from prior discussions on smart cities, I tend to think more about smart communities because it's very difficult to do a smart city across a whole city or region because of all the legacy uh, out there. What I like though is there's beginning to be a new definition of what a smart city is. And this is one that I'm kind of to see more and more. And that, we've seen the shift in what makes up a smart city from being associated with data and technology. And we're seeing it going to more of a layered definition now, where it takes the concepts of education, the broader commercial population. One of the terms that's being used a lot now by folks, and one that the WEF is beginning to use, is citizens' intelligence and humanizing technology there. And so what we're seeing is just like we're seeing the web move from the different web models to where the way it's going is more about personalization, more about that. We're seeing COP move from being very large to being very distributed now. I think we're going to see the definition of smart communities and smart cities continue to change to there. I mean, one of the terms I'm seeing a lot is that citizens have a lot of experience about the city, and that intelligence needs to be gathered and utilized. So it's part of the concept of the group intelligence that we often talk about. And the other thing that you're seeing is a role from being just the total of what the economic impact of the city is to more of one how to promote an outcome driven model. And this model is one where that participation, you've heard me talk about the technopolis in the past. The new definition I see of smart cities take more of the technopolis, where it requires the partnership between the cities, the larger regional, the private sector, civil societies, academia, and all of those have to come together. And as was said earlier, it's got to see how those parts contribute and make the difference besides just the infrastructure, technology, and services that have been in the early definition of smart city. The other thing that I want to say on this one, because I know we're time late, so I'm going to be pretty short on this last part, is that COVID, the pandemic, began to change dramatically the definition of smart cities, because the digital technology that facilitated remote work, it facilitated remote education. It really looked at how the private and the public online capabilities delivered service, how government did their services, how education, how healthcare changed to telehealth, and how you begin to see contactless interactions. Those really have changed a lot of how the definition of a smart city should be and how it works. And the new alliances have been made between all the different areas of the technopolis, and how that changed. Even the basic infrastructure has changed, with more of an emphasis on data and data pathways, more of an emphasis on public spaces that can be done with distancing and other things have become more important, and less some of the traditional ones before the pandemic had. And so to kind of summarize what I'm trying to say is the new definition of these smart cities, or again, I prefer smart communities, is one that uses these technologies, these services, these capabilities to more effectively engage citizens, to more effectively engage the businesses, to more effectively engage the education and the services in the community, and look at new ways to meet their needs. Again, we have to prioritize some of these with some of the security concerns, some of the privacy concerns, some of the digital divide concerns, and all of these have to come in place to where the cities become more competitive, the region becomes more competitive, and in today's society, that the cities become more sustainable as well. Uh, and I think that is some of the big changes, Sharif, that we're going to see in the smart cities of the future. And thank you for letting me be part.
Thank you. Professor Rob.
Well, if you look at the underlying concept of a smart city, whether it includes social constructs or is just simply focused on optimizing resources, the fact of the matter is that it really looks like the best way to approach the ideal smart city is a greenfield approach. In other words, starting from scratch, as opposed to attempting to retrofit, at least until we get to an ideal that we can build towards. The reason is the aging infrastructure in existing cities is very hard to change out. And I mean, New York still has buried underneath the ground the old pneumatic tubes that were used for messaging back in the 20s and 30s. Hundreds of feet of underground aging piping, electrical, and other things that are problematic and would be incredibly expensive to upgrade and replace. If you were to do so, not only would it be excessively costly to do it, the underlying benefits wouldn't really appear until towards the end of the project, and so you'd have a significant amount of cost up front, with the economic benefits probably coming for a subsequent mayor and city council. And the city council and mayor that approved the project wouldn't see the benefits; they'd just see the cost and likely not get reelected because of it. So it's relatively hard to do a decent job of retrofitting a city, both because of the economics and because of the way that the government is constructed, where it favors more tactical solutions than strategic. And doing a smart city conversion would be the very definition of a strategic move, of something that might take multiple decades to pull off, with it, much of the benefit being towards the end of the period. And now you can do interim approaches, smart stoplights. Some of the things that have been put in place in the past can take that gradual approach to making a city smarter and address some of the easier things to accomplish, like sequencing stoplights. But even looking at New York with sequenced stoplights, or more often in California, where it's been popular for decades, those systems can easily break down, and the underlying benefits are obfuscated by the proliferation of automobiles that tend to overwhelm the system. And so you really need kind of an initial holistic approach, much like Disney Smart City was, to showcase where it is we could go with regard to clean field, and then have an understanding of which technologies might have the greatest benefit for an existing city without reconstructing it. And there lies perhaps our biggest difficulty as we go forward. But we do have a solution now, and that solution lies in the metaverse. We don't have to actually build a smart city. We can virtually create it and showcase with increasing levels of accuracy how the population would live, interact, and function. And also identify early on where a lot of the resistance would be. My belief, by the way, a smart city probably would have no automobiles in it. Largely because the large-scale people movers would be more efficient, much like we use elevators in buildings as opposed to individual transports to get people up on the floors. The way we would handle smart cities is with large-scale people movers. But in so doing, the very wealthy or the most influential would need a way to bypass that stuff and showcase their influence. Otherwise, they're going to block the effort, and you're never going to get it in place. So understanding the psychodynamics of the effort and where the resistance is, and being able to address those resistances up front would be critical to getting the overall project completed. So my belief is the first step in creating the perfect smart city is actually to create it virtually initially, and showcase that the through iteration what the ideal layout of a city, whether it be coastal or central or located in an area of hostility or an area of peace. The design of the city would really have a great deal to do with the environment it was dropped into. And not only the weather events that would have to survive, but also the cultural and social events that would have to survive, and particularly if it's in a war-torn area, whether or not it could defend itself against hostile incursions. So first step is to really create a great virtual model. We don't have that model yet. The largest scale effort, of course, is NVIDIA's Earth 2, but that's mostly focused on global warming, global climate change, and weather mapping. But the underlying concept could be driven down, and is with regard to how they're using Omniverse, driven down all the way to a single building level, and then expanded out to a city. But the best approach probably is to first create what we think is the ideal environment virtually, test the construct, and then use it as a template to actually build that city out on a greenfield. And then, assuming that all works, use that as a showcase and how to improve the lives of others. One caution, however, in that we already know how to rank cities in terms of where people are happiest and most content. And yet that data rarely makes it into city planning, which I think is unfortunate, much like when we know which countries are the happiest, but once again, that rarely makes it into country planning or fiscal policy. And that's probably something that needs to get fixed. If we're going to approach smart city, we have to approach it smartly. In other words, it has to be data centric. The decisions have to be well-founded in research, tested in simulation, and then implemented and trialed and proven, so that then becomes the foundation of building our cities of tomorrow. And the cities of tomorrow are built on objective data, what we know about people and systems, and not based on subjective data, what we think we know about people and systems, which is the whole Dunning-Kruger problem with government at the moment. We have a lot of people in government that think they're experts on things that they are not expert in, and proving Dunning-Kruger right. The less they know, the more they are assured that they are the expert to be consulted, and that's problematic. And if we can't solve some of those initial problems, the truly smart city probably won't emerge until later on in the century, because we just simply won't have a path to get there. We have the tools, but getting through the decision-making process of government, making is strategic and data centric, remains problematic in any government approach to an underlying problem, which has a lot of self-dealing and private interests, which corrupt the process. So this is not an easy problem to solve, and that's why we often see with cities they go after the low-hanging fruit. They might automate water handling. They might automate traffic handling. They might automate and increase coverage for law enforcement. But all these systems, most of these systems do not. They aren't designed to interoperate, and often as they're implemented, they create future problems where those systems may need to interoperate and can't because they weren't designed to. Underlying concepts to be considered if doing a smart city: open is going to be key. Interoperable is going to be key. These systems, if you're going to implement them, have to anticipate the fact they're going to have to be integrated into some kind of a whole and put behind some type of a central pane of glass in terms of management and control at some future point. Yet right now, often the bids are let to the lowest bidder. Interoperability and transparency are a secondary, if not tertiary, consideration. And so the very things we need to be doing to create the building blocks of our city of tomorrow, smart city of tomorrow, are as yet outside of some of the Norwegian countries, South Korea and Singapore as examples, are yet not heavily self-evident and very dependent upon the individual governments and city planners in those regions. So building a foundation of data, proof, and understanding, I think, is the foundational element to creating the smart city of tomorrow, as is simulation, and then validated construction and verification of theory to make the smart city of tomorrow truly smart and beneficial for everyone in the city, not just the typical few that are involved in the construction effort. So it's a long way in coming. We have the tools. I just have my doubts whether we're going to be able to get there, at least in the United States and in large parts of Europe, until some of those fundamental elements are corrected.
Thank you. Professor Sharidan Tatsuno.
No, Rob, again, thank you very much for providing kind of this big framework. Okay, I'm very pragmatic. I'm an urban planner, environmental planner. I've been doing it for like 40, 50 years, and with tech, using virtual reality. So let me try to be kind of drill in. I agree with that it's easier to do greenfields, open land, and we call also brownfields, like old industrial military sites, than infill, which is in cities. It's harder because of the politics and zoning. I think one of the challenges now, people are moving toward brownfields, i.e. deserts, almost desert, like Tesla and Bill Gates, because it's easier there. The problem, there's water. And the problem with greenfields is that you're fighting the farm interests or people, environmentalists who want to keep nature instead of paving over again. So actually, in terms of climate point of view, greenfields are a no-no. If they want to move it back into the cities, and especially brownfields, old industrial sites, the empty downtowns where you already have the infrastructure. Infrastructure's a lot of concrete and steel, and it costs and it burns up a lot of carbon and destroys nature. So greenfields is kind of out now in terms of the world because we've run out of greenfields in many areas already. Anyway, so real quickly, one of the issues, and I do agree with the virtuality for simulations. We've been doing that. We did that for the London 2070 plan, but we did mostly infill. They had a new synchrotron outside the city, but we did all the housing, 15,000 units of housing within the city itself, so we didn't have to put lane more sewers and water and power. And then we put in light rail in. You can simulate everything in detail. You could jump onto the trains. You could see everything. We simulated all electric vehicle downtown, in fact, 2070. So today, the digital twin technology is so powerful that anybody who doesn't use it, I think, is a fool, because you could simulate, as everybody said here, you could simulate protests, you could simulate crowds, simulations, you could create fires, climates, whatever you want. So it's just cheaper. And the good part is that you can make it publicly available so citizens can actually review it, which is what's missing so far. One of the challenges I have always is in planning is that planners, environmentalists tend to be idealists. We want the ecotopia of the future, right? Everything's cheap housing, really great jobs, beautiful nature and all that. The problem is politics and money. And that's the harsh reality. So actually, I wrote books about it recently. I came out with this Gaiopolis plan, which is the next generation cities that are green and safe for pandemics. And I did, the planner's dream, and I showed a roadmap, how to decarbonize over the next 8 years. And it looks like every policy wonk string, right? And financiers dream. The problem is reality and truth. And then I wrote a novel and saying, here's what really happens. Disasters, budget deficits and protests and, and everything. And so I use Dante's Divine Comedy as a metaphor. And that's kind of the hero's journey. You start in hell or inferno, which is what we have today, dystopia. Cities are dystopic, poverty, hunger in the south. And you have this dream of the ideal green city, like take Bangladesh. They want the beautiful green city of the future. But meanwhile, you have the purgatory you have to go through, which is the politics, the corruption, the money, the nepotism, the lack of funding, the disasters. How do you get there? So the real challenge for everybody, not just Bangladesh, San Francisco is going through it too, is how do we get from our reality of crime and empty buildings and lack of money to this ecotopia that we all dream about. I mean, everybody has it. And it's not easy. So I try to discuss that. Now, one of the opportunities though, and I do agree with everybody here in that sense, it's not either or. We have to it's got to be driven by citizens, because urban planning, we know innovation starts at the grassroots and goes up. It rarely starts at the top. In fact, the top is usually bought off by established interests like oil and gas or whatever, natural gas. But the cities themselves, at the local level, there's an intelligence there of people organizing what we call is incremental innovation. Whether it's a brownfield, like Detroit after the collapse of the auto industry, they had all these empty factories, and they also had all these empty lots. So people started to organize. The city, the government didn't come in because they didn't have money or they didn't want to invest. So so I think one of the advantages of a bottom-up grassroots, I'll be frank, is that it's labor intensive. It requires an incredible amount of organizing. It's free because they're usually volunteers, and it requires creativity. In other words, you try to figure out how to grow food, share food, how not to spend money, but how to create value, like food or services, and doing it bottom up. So the best cities in the world, from what I've ever seen, are community-driven, collaborative groups, but also networked internationally to learn, which don't require too much money. So, for example, you could probably regenerate a whole brown area, like several blocks, for $10 million of seed funding as a bank, and they pay it back like the microloan programs. Whereas a government could spend $2 billion and totally waste it and end up with a ghost city, which is what we saw in China. Okay, so it's not money, definitely not money. It's about people who use all the systems that Rob and David and you have mentioned. Is that how do we learn from the failures of the past, and how do we figure out, given what our scenarios, what we want to do, and then how do we do it? And that's the hard part, is organizing people and structuring it. And but it's easier now. We used to use fax machines and letters. Now you just do it online real time with mobile. So I think it's going to be much easier in terms of communicating and building. But other than that, I think that there's a very positive opportunity for Bangladesh and any country, but I think they're going to have to do it their own way, bottom up, and not rely on government as much in order to really empower citizens and use the technology, which is dirt cheap now in many places, and do that and not rely on government always funding these massive projects, because we know they end up usually as white elephants, just ghost cities, and we waste billions of dollars. I'd rather give the money to the local people through microloans and enrich all the local people instead of spending on these big contractors, and then usually the money disappears anyway into bank accounts. So I think the citizen power is the only solution for the whole world, including San Francisco, because we don't have the money now. We're running a $730 million budget deficit in the next 2 years. It's going to be $1 billion in 3 years. Where do we? And so they're talking about massive layoffs coming if we don't figure it out. So anyway, again, I reiterate what everybody said here, and we learn from all that and then try to figure it out. And that's why we're doing it, because it has nothing to do with money, has nothing to do with politics, has everything to do about how smart and engaged are our citizens. And that's it. And if we can't figure that out as communities and districts, we don't have a future. So that's just what I'd like to say. Thank you so much.
You're muted, Sharif.
Okay,
Mr. Ching.
yeah, well, let me say this. Okay, people think I talk about theory and I talk about things which are not practical, but that's not true. Okay, I have from my experience, reading all these books, I think my 10 mentors and I formed the first virtual utopia on Earth. Okay, these people are so high level, those, Sade, Milton, Freeman, Kenneth Arrow, Paul Farben, they're so high level. We just communicate, everything is so comfortable, you see. We're just at a different level, okay? And basically they all rejected. Somehow they are not successful. They are all rejected by society. Their ideas are not accepted. Even Milton Friedman, recently I discovered his monetary theory is very important because the stock market controlled by money. Okay. When there's a quantity easing, stock market go up. Quantity tightening, it goes down. Okay, money controls things. Okay, so basically, Milton Friedman keep telling people his money is important, but they don't even accept him into the mainstream of economics. So I have 10 mentors, and we formed the first virtual utopia. Okay, I do things. Okay, now I have a lot of students. And also we do things. We go to San Francisco, Palo Alto, we form paradises for young people. Okay, so we do this thing. And also the next stage for the current civilization, for current culture is to move from science to social science. Okay, I'm spending a lot of time talking to Alan Greenspan, Bernanke. I skipped Yen because I talked to him at the conference. Then now I'm talking to Powell. Okay, this time Powell, people predict there will be financial crisis. If Powell follow my instruction, we might be able to skip this financial crisis. We had the savings and loan, which Alan Greenspan only mentioned me to Bernanke. Then we have Bernanke. Then I told him quantitative easing, and he did it. At least we are safe from total collapse. Another Great Depression. We have Great Recession. Now we have Power. Okay, this time I hope I can stop it. Not to let it occur. Also, we have formed this thing. Then another thing, the next stage is value determination. Okay, I have predict the real estate market almost without ever fail. I didn't know how to predict stock market. I still don't know how to predict stock market. But recently, I know how much it takes to predict the stock market. At least we have sense of that. Okay, the society is totally blind, and they want to form a smart city. Okay, the idea, I get from all our speakers, Sheridan, David, and Rob, is also for Dr. Sharif, we need to today we need to form virtual smart city. Okay, virtual. So for Bangladesh, you should start to search for smart city rather than try to create them. Okay, you get all the top people together. You go to associate with top people. They're not going to ask you for money. Okay, but then you have to listen. You got to have smart enough people to be receptive. Okay, my 10 mentors, none of whom I think is successful. You see, Kenneth Arrow, Geraldo, they all got Nobel Prize, but they're being rejected by society. Anybody hear the name Kenneth Arrow, they immediately turn their head. They were admiring me for speaking in conference. Then if I mention Kenneth Arrow, they all run away because they don't think there's any point in going to infinity. But mathematically, this is a necessity, okay, going to infinity. So all this thing, the process is Bangladesh, if you also want to do it, is to start with virtual smart city. Then first a virtual community, okay, virtual utopia. Then you go to the virtual world. It's a virtual next world. Next new world. What the society today, the world should look for, like this WEF, they should look for the next new world. But there's no way they can define it. They just want to top-down control. The people who are leading, who are actually trying to do this seriously are the grandson of Milton Friedman, Patrick Friedman. And another guy, David Sachs, I guess you people probably know him, know about him. He wrote the latest book against smart city, but his idea is still scientific, So he's, the culture is he's still the same. So basically, Bangladesh should start to collect best people, like in Taiwan. Taiwan was one time, one of my mentors is K.T. Lee. He's the architect of Taiwan economic miracle. And K.T. Lee is also the architect of China's World Factory. Okay, he sent one of his key people over to China and guide them into the World Factory. And the K.T. Lee, did something you people should, Bangladesh should copy. He just invite all the Chinese scholars back to Taiwan to have a 2-year appointment of a professorship or in a company. And that wouldn't take too much money, but it actually collected all the technical Chinese into Taiwan. Therefore, now today, Taiwan is try to share. The politicians, they try to fight for the right to be company directors so that they can get money, which has been generated by K.T. Lee. Okay, and this semiconductor company is dominating world semiconductor. Okay, K.T. Lee is a good example. See, I sent Milton Friedman and K.T. Lee to China. I recommend that they should go to China. They all both went to China, and they are the chief architect of Chinese growth. But the Chinese is still culturally, in the range of, say, roughly 15, very low. Okay, they can only think 3 variables. They try to copy science. Science already failing, and they try to copy. So they are not going any place. So the way to be successful is follow K.T. Lee's example. Also in the United States in 1960s, I guess Dave and Rob may have some experience. In the 1960s, they want to go to the moon, and that during the 60s, there was unlimited funding for scientists and researchers. Okay, all my professors, they are so smiling. They say, wow, those times they can get any amount of money they need. And because of that, everything with today's innovation all come from that time. Okay, you dump money into innovation and they will come out with results. Also in Bangladesh, you see, there's two countries during the 70s with the fastest growing countries. One is Taiwan, one is Brazil. Okay, the reason is they have the high density of small businesses. Everybody has small business. They all fail. All the small business, most of them fail. After 15 years, only one small business survived out of 100. Okay. And those are successful experiences. And now we talk about smart city. Smart city is just the opposite to the successful experience human being experiences. You see. So basically, I just feel that we should start with virtual because getting people together is very difficult, especially the real top people. My top people friends, you cannot get them over all the time. Okay, so you start with virtual, then you try to find some positions for the smart people in university. They for a couple of years, like KTD, like United States in the 1960s. So and also the countries, Taiwan and Brazil, encourage small businesses. Let them fail, then they will start another one, then they will start another one, then continuous, generate small businesses. And the small business owners are the hardest worker in the world. When I talked to KT Lee, he said, he just gave me one advice, put people to work. Okay, that's it. Okay, so all these things are not followed. And now we got this smart city idea and led by WEF. So WTEF should have a different view. Okay, if you like to, I'll give you my student name, and you guys can talk about cultural level quotient. Okay, Dave, take over.
David Smith, you're up.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Dr. Sharif. Just a couple wrap-up comments on me. As we begin to see where this whole smart city, smart communities headed, it is really looking about some key concepts. The concept behind smart cities to improve the quality of life of the citizens and of the people there, and through all the different types of areas you have there, including access to transportation, safety, green spaces, air, services, and opportunities. And many of the places of the recent views of smart cities have resolved around those type of things, is how can they enjoy modern utilities, intelligent transportation, digital experiences. Economic growth has been a very part of looking at smart cities today, because cities in the recent past have been the critical hubs for trade and commerce. And they're trying to begin to do that the same with the smart cities, the smart communities. Uh, Often what we're seeing today, particularly post pandemic, if I can say that much, is we're seeing that they're having more to do with connections and with the ability to find the right competencies and capabilities to get things done than actual pure geography in there. We're also seeing what are the drivers of economic growth. They're including education. How can education be enhanced? It includes the training type of things, like different ways to do education to increase the benefits of the citizens, to increase the capabilities for companies and things working there. And how can they begin to use insights from the smart city to attract more business, to expand business? Another key part of smart cities is driving uh, more streamlined transportation. How can you begin to monitor traffic conditions? How can you simplify things? How can you begin to be more effective that way? Another is, how does the uh, city, the region, how do they use the technologies, the services to improve the lives of the residents? For example, it's to allow government agencies to maybe streamline operations. It's be able to get them to be able to have better interconnect, better infrastructure there. And again, in today's time and view, an environmental sustainability has become an important part of smart cities, and one that I think you're going to see continue to dominate this space going forward. I recently met with the mayor of a city in Florida that is embracing their self as a smart city. And his definition even went a couple of more points besides what you see as the common. His definition is, how do I attract the intellectual capital from around the world into my city? How do I uh, attract the financial capital into the city? How do I establish the relationships of other smart cities around the world so that we can go ahead and work fully around to making smart cities happen? Because we're in a global environment today, and for smart cities to truly be a smart city, they have to be part of the global environment as well. So, Sharif, this is a great topic, but those are kind of my, I guess, final remarks at this point.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. This is an excellent session, and beside that, those who want to take action with the World Talent Economy Forum, specifically in South Asia, in between South Asia here, 2.5 billion people stay here, and we are helping a lot of people already. Homestoner, with his team from Pacific Rim Business Council, California, they are visiting our economic zone. Uh, I want to invite you all in Dhaka, and definitely I'm sure there are a lot of interesting projects, lot of interesting things happening in South Asia. I'm sure those who regularly support World Talent Economy Forum through your dialogues, through your strategy, through your guideline, you will be happy to participate. Thank you, Mr. Rob. Thank you, Mr. Sharidan Tatsuno. Thank you, Mr. Ching. And thank you, Mr. David Smith, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. Uh, Tomorrow we have very special uh, the closing sessions with Mr. Home Stoner and his team in Dhaka University. And next week, Mr. Tom Rose will join in our team, and he will help to develop the digital Bangladesh. And beside that, July we have a very big conference, and we want to train the CEO in Southeast Asia. So those who want to join as a trainer, as a speakers, you can directly communicate with us, and we can sponsor your tour and activities in Southeast Asia. Thank you, Professor Rob, and thank you everyone for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.